I'm 58 years old, and for 23 years, I've been hiding something that would rewrite every biology textbook ever printed. In the basement of my home in rural Montana, behind a steel door that looks like it leads to a storm shelter, I raised a creature the government has been hunting since 1962. They call them Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the missing link. I call her Maya. She was 3 weeks old when I found her, crying in the snow beside her mother's body, and the choice I made that frozen December night in 2001 set me on a collision course with forces I never knew existed. This isn't a story about discovery. This is a story about what happens when powerful people want something you love, and what they're willing to do to take it. December 14th, 2001. I was 35 years old, working as a wildlife biologist for the Montana Fish and Wildlife Department. My job was tracking wolf populations in the Cabinet Mountains wilderness, remote territory, brutal winters, the kind of place where you could disappear and no one would find you for months. That night, I was driving back from a week-long survey. Snow was falling hard, visibility maybe 20 feet. My truck's heater was barely keeping up with the cold seeping through the windows. Then I saw it. Something large, dark, sprawled across the logging road ahead. I stopped, grabbed my flashlight, stepped out into the howling wind. What I found changed everything I thought I knew about this world. It was a body, but not human, not any animal I'd ever seen. 8 feet tall, at minimum, covered in thick reddish-brown fur matted with ice and blood. The face was almost human, heavy brow, broad nose. Lips pulled back in what might have been a final grimace of pain. Female. I could tell from the body structure, and she'd been shot multiple times, high-caliber rounds. This wasn't a hunter's accident. This was an execution. I stood there, flashlight trembling in my hand, trying to process what I was seeing. A Bigfoot, a real, actual Bigfoot, dead on a logging road in Montana. Then I heard it, a sound that still haunts me, a high-pitched keening coming from the tree line. I followed it, pushed through the snow-covered brush, found a hollow beneath a fallen pine, and there she was. A baby. Couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, covered in fine auburn fur, eyes squeezed shut, crying for a mother who would never answer. She was dying, hypothermia, probably hours from death. I should have called someone. Should have reported what I'd found, should have let the authorities handle it, but I'd seen the bullet wounds in that mother's body. Someone had hunted her, killed her deliberately, and whoever did it might still be close. If I reported this, they'd take the baby, study her, dissect her, lock her in some underground facility where she'd never see sunlight again. I made my choice in 30 seconds. I wrapped her in my coat, put her in my truck, and drove home. That was 23 years ago. I never reported the body. By the time anyone found it, if anyone ever did, the scavengers and snow would have made identification impossible. Just another mystery in the wilderness. But Maya survived. The first 6 months were the hardest of my life. I knew nothing about raising an infant of an unknown species. I had no reference material. No veterinary guidance, no one I could ask without exposing what I'd done. So I improvised. She wouldn't take formula. I tried everything. Cow's milk, goat's milk, soy-based substitutes. She rejected all of it. Lost weight, grew weaker. I was watching her die. Then, out of desperation, I tried something different. Raw elk meat, blended into a slurry, mixed with bone broth I made myself. She drank it, kept it down, started gaining weight. That's when I understood something crucial. She wasn't just a different species, she was a predator. By 3 months, she was crawling. By 5 months, walking. Her development was accelerating far beyond human norms. And she was watching me, learning. Those amber eyes tracked every movement I made, every word I spoke. Here's what I can confirm after 23 years of observation. They understand language. Completely. Maya never developed the vocal anatomy for human speech. Her larynx sits too high, her tongue is too thick, but she comprehends English perfectly. By her first birthday, she could follow complex instructions. By 2, she was communicating through a combination of gestures, expressions, and vocalizations I gradually learned to interpret. She called me something that sounded like Da. I think it meant father, but here's the part that still makes my blood run cold. During those first months, while I was desperately trying to keep her alive, I noticed something. Vehicles, driving past my property at odd hours, slowing down near my driveway, never stopping but always watching. Black SUVs with government plates, they were looking for something, and I was terrified they'd find it. I need to tell you about my property, because understanding the geography is essential to understanding how I kept Maya hidden for over 2 decades. I own 200 acres in Lincoln County, Montana, inherited it from my father, who bought it in 1971 for practically nothing. The main house sits at the end of a mile-long private road, no neighbors within visual range, national forest on 3 sides. The basement was originally a root cellar. My grandfather expanded it during the Cold War. He was convinced nuclear war was coming and wanted a fallout shelter. What he built was essentially an underground bunker. Reinforced concrete walls, separate ventilation system, a hidden entrance disguised as a utility closet. When I brought Maya home, that basement became her world. I know how that sounds. I know what you're thinking. That I imprisoned her, kept her in a cage like an animal. But you have to understand something. She couldn't go outside, not in daylight, not ever, because they were watching, and they never stopped. Over Maya's first 5 years, I documented 147 separate surveillance incidents, vehicles parked on the fire road overlooking my property, aircraft, always small planes, never commercial, circling overhead at low altitudes. Once, I found boot prints in the snow near my barn, military-style treads, no explanation for how they got there. Someone knew something had survived that night in December 2001. They just didn't know where. So I built Maya a life underground. I expanded the basement, added rooms, created an environment where she could move, play, learn, grow. And she grew fast. By age 5, Maya was 4 feet tall and incredibly strong. I watched her bend a steel pipe with her bare hands while playing. She wasn't trying to demonstrate strength. She was just curious about what would happen. I started being very careful about what materials I left within her reach. Her intelligence continued to develop in ways that defied every assumption I'd had about non-human cognition. She understood cause and effect. She could problem solve. She showed clear emotional responses: joy, fear, frustration, affection. And she was intensely bonded to me. When I left the basement each night, she would press her hand against the door and make a soft, mournful sound. When I returned each morning, she would rush to greet me, wrapping her long arms around my waist with a gentleness that seemed impossible given her strength. I was her entire world. That responsibility weighed on me every single day. By 2008, Maya was 7 years old. She stood 5.5 feet tall and showed no signs of slowing her growth. Her auburn fur had darkened to a deep mahogany brown. Her face had matured, losing the rounded softness of infancy, developing the strong features I'd seen in her mother's body that frozen night. She was beautiful. There's no other word for it. But something was changing. Something I hadn't anticipated. Maya was getting restless. She paced the basement for hours, stood beneath the ventilation shafts, sniffing the air from outside. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear her making sounds I'd never heard before. Low, rumbling vocalizations that seemed to come from deep in her chest. She was calling for something, or someone. I started leaving the property at night, hiking deep into the national forest, listening. And twice, I need to be careful here because I can't confirm this, twice I heard responses, distant calls, similar to Maya's, coming from somewhere in the Cabinet Mountains. There were others out there. This raised terrifying questions. If there was a population of these creatures in the wilderness, why hadn't Maya's mother been with them when she was killed? Why was she alone on that logging road? And who had shot her? The theory I developed, and this is only a theory, I want to be clear, is that Maya's mother was fleeing, running from something or someone. The logging road wasn't her territory, it was an escape route. But escape from what? I started researching, quietly, carefully, using public library computers, never my home internet connection. I searched for any records of unusual wildlife incidents in the region. What I found made my stomach drop. Between 1998 and 2001, there were 14 documented cases of unidentified large mammal sightings in the Cabinet Mountains area. All reports were filed with local authorities. All reports were subsequently classified and removed from public databases. Someone was systematically erasing evidence, and there was more. In 2003, a hiker found what he described as a mass grave in a remote canyon about 40 miles from my property. Large bones, unusual skeletal structures. He reported it to the Forest Service. 2 days later, the area was cordoned off. Geological survey, they said. The hiker was visited by men in suits who suggested he'd been mistaken about what he saw. He never spoke about it publicly again. This wasn't just surveillance. This was a cover-up, systematic, decades long, and far more extensive than I'd imagined. Whatever Maya was, the government didn't just know about her species, they were hunting them. Maya turned 10 in 2011. She was 6 feet tall. Her strength was astonishing. I once watched her move a 400-pound generator that I couldn't budge with a hand truck. Her senses were far beyond human capacity. She could hear my truck approaching from over a mile away. She could smell visitors on my clothing for days after I'd been in town. And her intelligence had developed in ways I still struggle to articulate. She understood abstract concepts: time, mortality, deception. That last one bothered me. Maya knew she was being hidden. She understood that there were people outside who wanted to find her. And she had developed sophisticated strategies for remaining undetected. When the surveillance vehicles came, and they still came, even after all those years, Maya would go completely silent. Not just quiet, silent. Her breathing would slow, her movements would cease. She would become a shadow in the corner of the basement, invisible even to someone standing 5 feet away. This wasn't learned behavior, at least not from me. It was instinct, inherited knowledge, the survival programming of a species that had evolved alongside humans for thousands of years and learned to hide from them. But something happened in the spring of 2011 that changed our situation dramatically. I got sick. It started with fatigue, then weight loss, then blood in places blood shouldn't be. Colon cancer, stage 3. The diagnosis hit me harder than you might expect, not because I was afraid of dying, but because I was terrified of what would happen to Maya when I was gone. She was completely dependent on me. She couldn't survive in the outside world. She couldn't feed herself, hide herself, protect herself from the people who were hunting her kind. If I died, she died. I had surgery, chemotherapy, 18 months of hell that left me weak, exhausted, and terrified. Maya knew something was wrong. She would press close to me during my visits, making soft sounds of concern. When I vomited, which happened frequently during chemo, she would stroke my back with her massive hand, impossibly gentle. She was caring for me. The reversal of our roles wasn't lost on either of us. By late 2012, I was in remission, weak but alive, and I had made a decision. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed help, someone I could trust absolutely, someone who could take over Maya's care if the cancer came back, or if something else happened to me. I thought of my younger sister, Ellen. She lived in Bozeman, worked as a nurse, single, private, skeptical of authority. She'd always been the rebel in our family. If anyone could handle this secret, it was her. In March 2013, I invited Ellen to visit, and I showed her what I'd been hiding for 12 years. Ellen's reaction was not what I expected. She didn't scream, didn't run, didn't call me insane. She cried. She stood in the basement looking at Maya, who watched her with cautious, intelligent eyes, and tears streamed down her face. "She's real," Ellen whispered. "They're real." "You knew?" Ellen turned to me. "Dad saw one in 1969, up near Glacier. He never told anyone except Mom. Everyone thought it was a story. But I always wondered." She stepped closer to Maya, slowly, respectfully. "Hello," she said. "My name is Ellen. I'm Thomas's sister." Maya studied her for a long moment. Then she looked at me, a question in her amber eyes. "She's family," I said. "She's safe." Maya extended one long arm and touched Ellen's face, gently, curiously. Ellen laughed through her tears. "Her hands are so warm." That day, our circle of trust expanded from 1 to 2. Ellen visited monthly after that. She brought medical supplies, helped me improve the basement's ventilation system, and spent hours with Maya, building her own bond with the creature I'd raised from infancy. Maya accepted her, trusted her, even seemed to enjoy having a second human in her life. But Ellen also brought something else: information. Through her work at the hospital, Ellen had access to medical databases and government health records. She started digging, looking for anything related to unusual biological specimens or classified medical research. What she found terrified us both. There was a facility, location classified, but somewhere in Nevada, officially designated as a CDC research station studying zoonotic diseases. Unofficially. The data Ellen uncovered suggested something very different: tissue samples from unidentified primates, genetic research into anomalous hominid DNA, budget allocations for specimen acquisition and containment. They weren't just hunting Maya's species, they were capturing them. The next 5 years were a constant balance between hope and terror. Maya continued to thrive. By 2018, she was fully grown, 7 feet tall, probably 400 pounds, with strength I couldn't measure and intelligence that continued to surprise me. She had developed a sophisticated vocabulary of gestures and sounds. We could have actual conversations, albeit slow and limited ones. I learned more about her species in those years than any scientist ever had. Here's what I can confirm. They are not animals, not in any meaningful sense. They have culture. Maya remembered things her mother had taught her, specific vocalizations, certain gestures, ways of moving through space that seemed ritualistic. They mourn their dead. Maya would sometimes sit in silence, making soft sounds, and I knew she was thinking about her mother. After 17 years, she still grieved. They have spiritual beliefs. This is harder to confirm, obviously, but Maya showed consistent behaviors that suggested a sense of something beyond the physical. She would face east at dawn and make specific sounds. She treated certain objects, stones, feathers, pieces of wood, with what appeared to be reverence. They're not the evolutionary missing link scientists theorize about. They're something else entirely. Something that evolved alongside us, hidden in the wild places, watching humanity rise while they remained in the shadows. Why did they hide? I asked Maya once, using our gesture language. You're kind. Why stay hidden? Her response was complex, took me days to fully interpret, but it boiled down to one idea: fear. Not fear of humans, fear of what humans would become. Her species had watched us, observed our development, seen our capacity for violence, destruction, and cruelty. And they had made a choice, generations ago, to disappear, to let us believe they were myths, to survive. The implications of this still keep me awake at night. An intelligent species, living alongside us for thousands of years, deliberately remaining hidden because they were afraid of what we might do. And based on what I learned next, they were right to be afraid. September 2019. I was 53 years old. Maya was 17, fully adult by the standards of her species. Ellen visited every week now, helping with Maya's care as my body continued to weaken from the long-term effects of cancer treatment. We had developed a routine, a life. It wasn't normal by any definition, but it was ours. Then the call started. My phone would ring, always from blocked numbers, always at odd hours. When I answered, silence, just breathing on the other end. Then a click. This happened 14 times over 3 weeks. Then the call stopped, and the visitors arrived. A black Suburban, government plates, pulling into my driveway on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I watched through the window as 3 people got out. 2 men in suits, obvious federal agents, and a woman in civilian clothes, jeans, hiking boots, a jacket with a logo I didn't recognize. They walked to my door, knocked. "Mr. Thomas Reed, we'd like to speak with you." My heart was pounding, but I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. I opened the door, kept my expression neutral. "Can I help you?" The woman stepped forward. She was maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "My name is Dr. Patricia Vance. I'm with a research division of the Department of the Interior. These gentlemen are from the FBI. May we come in?" "What's this about?" We're investigating illegal wildlife trafficking in this region. Your name came up in connection with some unusual activity. I'm a retired wildlife biologist. I haven't worked in the field for years. We know. That's partly why we're here." She paused. "Mr. Reed, we believe you have information that could help us locate endangered specimens. Specimens that certain foreign interests are attempting to acquire." I stared at her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" The silence stretched between us. Then Dr. Vance smiled again. "May we come in? This would be easier to discuss privately." I let them in. What choice did I have? They sat in my living room, asked questions about my career, my property, my hobbies. I answered carefully, revealing nothing. But the whole time, I could feel it. Dr. Vance wasn't here to investigate wildlife trafficking. She was here for Maya. And she knew she didn't have proof. If she had proof, they wouldn't be asking questions. But she knew something was on my property. After an hour, they left. Dr. Vance handed me her card. "If you remember anything that might help our investigation, please call. Anytime." I watched the Suburban drive away. Then I went to the basement. Maya was pressed into the far corner, completely still, completely silent. She'd heard everything. "They're looking for you," I said. "They don't know for sure, but they suspect." Maya looked at me with those amber eyes, and she made a sound I'd never heard before. It took me a moment to interpret it. She was asking if we should run. We didn't run. Looking back, maybe we should have. But I was 53 years old, still recovering from cancer treatment, living on a fixed income. Where would we go? How would I care for a 7-foot-tall non-human being while evading federal surveillance? So we stayed, adapted, became even more careful. I installed security cameras around the property, set up motion sensors, created a communication system with Ellen, code words that meant everything's fine, or they're here, or get out now. The surveillance intensified. Black vehicles parked on the fire road, drones overhead, small ones, civilian-looking, but I knew they weren't hobbyists. And then, 6 months later, everything changed. March 2020. The world locked down for COVID. But for me and Maya, the lockdown was a gift. The surveillance stopped. The black SUVs disappeared. The drones vanished from the sky. Whatever agency had been watching me, their resources had been redirected to the pandemic response. We had breathing room for the first time in years. I used it. Ellen helped me build an escape route, a tunnel from the basement to a hidden bunker in the forest, 300 yards from the house. If they ever came with warrants and search teams, Maya would have a way out. I documented everything, created copies of my research, my observations, my evidence of Maya's intelligence and emotional capacity, stored backups in secure locations, built a case that, if revealed, would make it impossible for them to simply disappear her into a laboratory. And I made a decision. If they came for Maya, I wouldn't go quietly. I would blow the whistle, release everything, force the world to see what I'd seen, that she wasn't a specimen, she was a person. The surveillance resumed in spring 2021, but something had changed. The vehicles were different, the approach was different, and when Dr. Patricia Vance returned to my property, she wasn't pretending to investigate wildlife trafficking anymore. "Mr. Reed," she said, standing in my driveway, not even bothering to come to the door. "We know what you have. We've known for some time." I said nothing. "The specimen in your basement is the last known juvenile of its kind. Every other population has been accounted for." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, accounted for?" Dr. Vance's smile was gone. Her face was blank, professional. "There's a program, Mr. Reed. It's been running since 1962, originally tasked with study and observation. But priorities change. Funding requirements shift. The specimens became assets." "Assets for what?" "That's classified." I stared at her. "You've been killing them. We've been managing a situation. These creatures pose potential threats to national security. Their intelligence, their strength, their ability to evade detection. In the wrong hands, they could be weaponized." "So you weaponize them first?" Dr. Vance didn't answer. "What do you want?" "The specimen. She's the last viable female of reproductive age. Do you understand what that means? She's the only chance to preserve the species under controlled conditions. In our facility, she'd be protected, studied, allowed to breed. Breed, I repeated. You want to breed her like livestock. I want to ensure the survival of an endangered species. What you've done here, keeping her isolated, hidden, you've prevented any chance of natural reproduction. You've doomed her to be the last of her kind. The words hit harder than she knew, because she was right. In 23 years, I'd never considered finding Maya a mate, never thought about what it meant that she was alone. I'd been so focused on protecting her that I hadn't considered whether I was also condemning her. But breeding facilities, government control, assets. No. She's not going anywhere, I said. Dr. Vance nodded slowly. I was afraid you'd say that. Mr. Reed, you have 72 hours to reconsider. After that, we'll be forced to take action, legal action, physical action, whatever's necessary. She turned and walked back to her SUV. 72 hours, the vehicle drove away, and I began preparing for war. The next 72 hours were a blur. Ellen came immediately. We activated every contingency we'd ever discussed. Maya was moved to the forest bunker. Supplies were stockpiled. Escape routes were mapped. I made copies of my documentation and sent them to journalists, scientists, lawyers, anyone I thought might listen. Encrypted files with instructions not to open unless something happened to me. And I tried to explain to Maya what was coming. Bad people, I signed to her. Coming soon. Want to take you. We hide. We run. We fight if we have to. Maya watched me with those amber eyes. Then she did something that broke my heart. She signed back. You hide. You run. Maya fights. She was trying to protect me. After everything I'd done for her, she was willing to sacrifice herself to save me. No, I signed. We stay together. Always. Maya placed her massive hand on my chest, over my heart. Da, she said, her word for father. Together. The 72 hours passed. On hour 73, they came. Not in SUVs this time, in helicopters, 3 of them. Setting down in the meadow beyond my property line, armed men in tactical gear, Dr. Vance in civilian clothes directing them. They had warrants, federal orders, authority to search every inch of my property and seize any undocumented biological specimens. I stood on my porch as they approached. Mr. Reed, Dr. Vance called, this doesn't have to be difficult. You're right, you can leave. We have legal authority. You have paperwork that says you can take whatever you want. That's not authority. That's power. There's a difference. The tactical team reached my door. And then everything went sideways. The sound came from the tree line. Low, rumbling, deep enough to feel in your chest. Everyone froze. It came again, louder. Closer. The tactical team raised their weapons. Dr. Vance's face went pale. From the forest, shapes emerged. Tall, massive, covered in fur ranging from black to reddish-brown to gray. 7 of them. 7. They moved with a fluidity that seemed impossible for creatures their size. Silent, coordinated, forming a semicircle around the property. Maya's calls, the ones I'd heard her making for years. She hadn't been crying out in loneliness. She'd been calling for help. The largest of them, 8 feet tall at least, with silver-streaked fur and scars across its face, stepped forward. It looked at me. Then it looked at Dr. Vance and her team. And it spoke. Not in sounds, not in gestures, in words, broken, rough, barely human. But words. You take no one. Dr. Vance stumbled backward. The tactical team's weapons wavered. This forest, ours. This, the creature pointed at my house, at me. Family, ours, you, leave. I couldn't breathe. They could speak. They'd always been able to speak. They'd just chosen not to, until now. What happened next is still classified. I know that Dr. Vance and her team retreated. I know that phone calls were made, chains of command consulted, decisions reached at levels far above her authority. Within 24 hours, my property was empty. No helicopters, no tactical teams, just silence. Dr. Vance visited one final time. Alone. There's been a decision, she said. Her voice was different now, smaller. Your property and the surrounding federal land are being designated as protected wilderness. No development, no access, permanently. And Maya? No further attempts at acquisition will be made." She paused. "Mr. Reed, what happened here, what those creatures demonstrated, changes everything. They're not animals. They're not specimens. They're a civilization, hidden, ancient, and apparently, they've been watching us far more closely than we've been watching them." "What happens now?" Dr. Vance looked toward the tree line, where the creatures had vanished back into the forest. Now we try to figure out how to share a planet with another intelligent species, one that's been here longer than we have, knows us better than we know them, and has deliberately hidden from us for thousands of years." She turned to leave, then stopped. Why didn't they reveal themselves before? They could have stopped us decades ago. I thought about Maya's gestures, her explanations about fear, about watching, about waiting. They were afraid of us, what we might do, how we might react. And now? Now they have something worth protecting, someone who showed them that not all humans are a threat. Dr. Vance nodded slowly. Then she walked to her vehicle and drove away. I never saw her again. That was 3 years ago. I'm 58 now. Maya is 23. She doesn't live in the basement anymore. She lives in the forest with others of her kind. A community I never knew existed, hiding in the deepest wilderness, watching humanity from the shadows. But she visits. Every few days she appears at the edge of my property at dawn. We sit together on my porch. We watch the sunrise. Sometimes we talk. My gestures, her broken words that she's slowly learning to refine. Sometimes we're just quiet. The silver-furred elder, I've learned his name is something unpronounceable to human tongues, so I call him Elder, has visited twice. He's old, far older than any human. He remembers things that happened before my great-grandfather was born. He told me their history, slowly, carefully, in words that took months to interpret. They are not what we think they are. They did not evolve separately from humans. They are what some humans became. Long ago, choosing the forest over cities, nature over technology, hiding over conflict. They are our cousins, our shadows, the path not taken, and they have been waiting to see if humanity would destroy itself, destroy the planet, destroy them. For thousands of years they've watched and prepared and hidden. But Maya changed something. A human raised one of their children, protected her, loved her as his own. That meant something to them. It meant that maybe, just maybe, coexistence was possible. I don't know what the future holds. The government knows now. The true scope of this, an entire parallel civilization existing in Earth's wilderness, can't stay secret forever. There will be questions, debates, probably conflict. But for now, in this moment, there is peace. Maya is safe. She has her own kind. She has a future. And I have something I never expected when I found that dying infant in the snow 23 years ago. I have hope. Not just for Maya, for all of us. Because if we can coexist with beings we've feared and hunted for centuries, beings we refuse to believe were even real, maybe we can learn to coexist with each other. Maybe the greatest discovery isn't that Bigfoot exists. Maybe it's that we're capable of being better than we've been. I think about that frozen night in 2001, the choice I made, the life that followed. I regret nothing. Every secret I kept, every risk I took, every sacrifice I made, worth it. Because Maya lived, Maya thrived, Maya found her people. And along the way, she taught me something about my own. We are capable of kindness, of love that crosses every boundary, of protecting those who cannot protect themselves, even when the world tells us not to, even when the powerful demand otherwise, even when it costs us everything. That's what Maya taught me. That's what I want the world to know. I sit on my porch as the sun rises over the Cabinet Mountains. From the tree line, a figure emerges, 7 feet tall, mahogany fur gleaming in the early light. Maya walks toward me, sits beside me. We don't speak. We don't need to. She puts her hand over mine. And somewhere in the forest, I hear others calling, her family, our family. After 23 years of hiding, after everything we've survived, after all the fear and the secrets and the close calls, we're finally home, both of us, together.